In Myrtle Beach, you always go at your own pace. Lie out on the sand, lie out by the pool, go boogie boarding, go surfing, walk the boardwalk, walk the marsh walk, golf at one of 90 golf courses, mini golf at one of 50 mini golf courses, fish off a pier, fish from a chartered boat, go shopping, get drinks, eat the freshest seafood. The list is exhaustive, but the experience isn't. You can go all out or do nothing at all. How you relax is up to you. There is so much to do and explore, whether you're traveling with friends, family, or just yourself. With 60 miles of beach, you're going to find your place. If this sounds like what you need, then this is where you belong.
Realtree has always had a connection to the fishing industry and the outdoor lifestyle. In 2016, Realtree expanded on the traditional business of creating the world's most effective camouflage patterns to create a fishing brand and family of patterns designed to connect the woods to the water and strengthen the bond between the two worlds. We couldn't be more excited to be working with the industry's top brands, retailers, and anglers to continue our growth, and we hope that you will join us. Enjoy Realtree fishing patterns inshore, offshore, on the lake, or at the dock. Learn more about the extensive line Realtree fishing patterns, apparel, gear, and more at Realtree.com.
Hey, do y'all like fishing for prizes? Maybe a trip to Costa Rica or a once-in-a-lifetime African safari? Well, the Grand Strand Fishing Rodeo is back. Thanks to the hard work of Visit Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and Trilogy Outdoors Media, this once popular event is back and is bigger and better than ever. This event is comprised of 12 monthly competitions that culminate in November with our annual banquet and expo, the celebration of fishing on the Grand Strand. New to this event is the freshwater division that will help include all of our anglers that live and visit the Grand Strand throughout the year. Monthly species winners will receive great prize packages from Bass Pro Shop and Surf Signs and Designs. But most importantly, they will receive an invite for them and a guest to our annual banquet and an entry in the grand prize drawing. So whether you fish the rivers, a pond, the pier, the surf, or a boat, you have a chance to win the grand prizes. To get signed up or for additional information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com and click on event. Also, you can visit any of our weigh stations and registration stations to get signed up as well. Thanks to our wonderful sponsors, South Atlantic Bank, Surf Signs and Designs, Bass Pro Shops, Trilogy Outdoors Media, Visit Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and many more. Best of luck to everyone, and we'll see you at the scale.
Trilogy Outdoors.
All right, folks, it's Trilogy Outdoors podcast time, and we are back in the Trilogy Outdoors podcast studio, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague who, for the time being, I'm going to enjoy every week that you're here because I know what's on the horizon eventually, and you put a frown on your face. I got a frown on mine, trust me. But I will just let you know, there is a long list of people that want your position.
They don't know that they don't want it yet.
They don't know that they don't want it, but they don't realize the shoes that they have to fill. I'm asking for resumes now. I think that's the next step is I'm going to have to take resumes. But, of course, we know that Big Steve is definitely on the short list. We know that Rick Alston has sent me a couple checks, and we've got him on the list as well.
You should remove Rick from the short list.
And we also know that Captain Jay Bache, Captain Jason Burton, we've got a great list. And we'll do just fine. But you have, last week was a great show. Enjoyed George, enjoyed Bouncer. I hate you had that, it ran long.
Yeah. It was good, though.
And not very often will we lose you or me in the middle of the show, but you had a meeting to go to, and the show ended great. I'm glad we got Bouncer on. And Bouncer is a trip. But this week was your week to keep up, get us some content lined up. And as always, I put you responsible for all the very deep content that we put on. And, of course, anything diving is coming straight through you. So you messaged me a couple weeks ago about this name. And real quick, kind of give him an intro, and then we'll get him in here with us.
Yeah, so Michael Barnette is Michael is a marine biologist with NOAA. He is, I would say, more famous for his recent History Channel show called Into Troubled Waters, the Bermuda Triangle, where they essentially explore the Bermuda Triangle and they're looking for shipwrecks and plane wrecks and they have found a number of historically significant plane wrecks.
Oh, I'd say so.
And shipwrecks. And so it's a topic that's interesting to me. So whether it's a topic that's interesting to you or not, don't care. We're going to have a good time with it. I'd like to introduce Michael Barnette. Michael, are you there?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Stephen?
Good. Thanks for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So, Mike, you are a marine biologist by trade. You actually have some history here in South Carolina, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I actually went to the University of South Carolina and learned to dive there in Columbia and then off the coast of Myrtle Beach. I think my first checkout dive offshore was on a Civil War wreck. So, yeah, pretty much tied pretty tightly there with South Carolina.
Yeah. Well, you and I, we were trying to figure this out earlier. You and I had met each other a couple times in the past, either at the St. Pete's Open or offshore of South Carolina at some point in time through spearfishing adventures. But we certainly appreciate you coming back through the airwaves to South Carolina to tell us about some of the stuff you've been doing lately. You have begun, well, you've always made a name for yourself in this diving community, especially in the deep diving community. There's not a big group of us that do deep diving, and I'd say technical diving, but I'm a technical recreational diver, if that makes sense. I don't do a whole lot of commercial diving anymore, but there's not a big group of us, and you're doing some really deep, fun stuff to find historical shipwrecks. And so anyway, proud to talk to you. Happy that you're on. Interesting topic to me, which is why you're here today, and I look forward to getting into this. So I think one of the most obvious things that we got to just lead off with, because everybody and anybody that's watched the History Channel knows, I think, that you are the discoverer, one of the primary researchers in this Into Troubled Waters show, and y'all found some really interesting shipwrecks, plane wrecks, and I think we got to start with the Challenger. Y'all found a piece of the Challenger, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we were out doing some recon dives, myself and my partner in crime, Jimmy Godomsky. We were basically trying to eliminate a lot of targets, just trying to clear the playing board, so to speak. We're looking for this one iconic aircraft. It's a PBM Martin Mariner. It's a search and rescue aircraft that was sent out back in 1945 looking for the iconic Flight 19 that I think everyone's heard about, or read about, or seen in movies. But this is a lesser known aspect of that story, and it took off from just south of Cape Canaveral and traveled up to the northeast to go try to reconnect with the missing Avengers and guide it back to shore. And so obviously back in 1986, when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded after liftoff, and there was a massive, it was one of the largest search and recovery efforts ever undertaken, trying to get all the pieces of the Challenger for the investigation to figure out what happened to the shuttle that day. And in doing so, they stumbled across a lot of other stuff, a lot of just garbage, a lot of geology, and other shipwrecks. They found a few shipwrecks. And one of their entries in their database was this aircraft propeller. And it was plausible to at least to check it out to make sure it wasn't related to this PBM Martin Mariner, because it would be right under the flight path the aircraft took back in 1945. So we felt, let's just go ahead and, mark it off the list. And so we went out, had a cluster of other wreck numbers in that general area. And in the process of doing that, we didn't find the aircraft, but we came across this piece of wreckage that was aviation adjacent. It felt like it was related to an aircraft. And what we found, as it turned out, was the left wing of the Space Shuttle Challenger. And,
wow.
We were quite shocked to find that, because it was the last thing we thought we'd find, because we were under the impression everything was recovered back in 1986.
Yeah,
and that was not the case.
And what made it obvious, I think, from the video that I watched, what made it obvious to y'all was the heat tiles, the heat tiles that were actually on the underneath of the wing. Is that correct?
Exactly. There's the ceramic tiles. As we move some sand, because it's almost laying flat to the sand, the seafloor, and the sand is it's near the shoals, and so it obviously is sanded and unsanded many times over the past decades. And there's the isolation pads that go underneath the heat tiles. Then as we moved some sand away and found, revealed actually intact tiles, that was kind of the the smoking gun, the fingerprint that this is definitely related to the orbiter, Challenger. So, over the years, I've made a lot of different contacts, and we did some diving back 20 years ago off Cape Canaveral, and the charter boat captain that took us out had asked if his friend could come out with us to just observe. And that person who we became really good friends with was a guy named Bruce Melnick, who was a 2-time shuttle astronaut. And so we've kept in touch over the past years, and I sent him a picture of basically what this was, and I said, "Is this related to the Challenger?" Because I had my suspicions.
Yeah.
And he told us right then and there in response to the text saying it's 200% without a doubt. That is, he told us exactly what it was. And so, yeah, it was like getting hit by a bolt of lightning when we realized what it was and the impact of that. And then obviously, your memories of where you were when that happened. I've always said that, I've been diving. I've been very fortunate to dive a lot of historic shipwrecks over my career, whether it be the USS Monitor, the Andrea Doria, the Lusitania. I mean, things you read about in history books. But this is different because this is an event that I lived through. I'm sure a lot of other people lived through. So that has more of an impact. It resonates more. So that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, sort of the 9/11 moment of maybe the generation prior. Everybody that, was of a certain age sort of remembers where you were when the Challenger, and everybody has their own little hometown hero. You've got a little hometown hero, Inglis?
Yeah, most definitely. I was actually sitting in Ronald McNair's aunt's class
His
when it
aunt's
happened.
class. Yeah, his
Yep.
aunt's class. That's right. Okay. Well, I mean, there are actually signs in Lake City with his name.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, the main 52 out there, that section is the Ronald McNair Highway, and then of course the statue that we have downtown.
Yeah.
But it was definitely one of those moments. I mean, I think back to my mom telling me about when JFK got assassinated.
Yeah.
Her in school, and the similarities are definitely there in my mind, and to think about somebody finding part of that. I mean, so this was found in the last year, right?
Yeah, it was about this time last year. We did the recon dives. When we first went out there, we had just horrendous visibility. It was basically blacked out on the bottom. We had to come back about a month later. And we had really what you see in the TV shows. That was the real eye-opening dive for us. We could actually see how big it really was and what we were dealing with. And that was
wow,
pretty amazing. It just there's the parallels as well. These guys were American heroes, but as a diver and explorer, what I do underwater, and there's the parallels between an astronaut exploring outer space and what we do exploring inner space. So again, I felt a kinship very remotely, but I felt that this was sacred ground. These guys, back then, everyone was watching, these launches. It wasn't just national news. This was global news.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
sad day.
So super cool, and super sad certainly, but super cool that you were able to put your hands on a piece of history like that. Such a significant piece of history. I've had the pleasure, the honor of putting my hands on some historical shipwrecks in the past too, and to me at least, one of the most significant or impactful parts of the whole process. Well, first of all, I mean, finding it, when you actually, you see a mark on the bottom machine or whatever on the magnetometer, and you go and you bottom truth it, and there's actually a wreck there or a piece of a wreck, and you start to fan and get underneath sand, and you realize that's actually a shipwreck. That's a cool part. But when you take it the next step, and you figure out exactly what that shipwreck or that plane crash is. Like, okay, here's for certain, I found the bell or the capstan, or in your case, the heat tiles. And somebody says, that's it. That is such like you said, a lightning bolt moment, such a cool moment. And so kudos to you and your team for finding it. Super awesome, and proud to know you. Yeah. So, but one of the things I wanted to go back to that's always intrigued me. I don't want to take too much away from Challenger because that is super cool. But one of the things that has always intrigued me is Flight 19, and most people, Mike, you understand this better than most people. Most people don't understand how much of a needle in a haystack it is to find a shipwreck or a plane crash in the middle of the ocean. But, there was, what was there, 6 in Flight 19, if I remember correctly?
It was 5.
5.
5 aircraft.
All right, so
yeah.
5.
The PBM Martin Mariners and 6th one, yeah.
Yeah, so, if you can, that's right, if you include the search plane. I mean, there's a significant amount of debris you would think scattered over, I don't know, I mean, if they're flying in formation, you would think that they'd be fairly close, within a mile of each other. Hard to believe, even though I know, intuitively having done this, even though I know that, it's still a little bit hard to believe that 5 wrecks scattered, 5 plane crashes scattered over, an area of a couple of miles hasn't been found yet. Just amazing to me. It's still an unexplored piece of our world that is so hard for people to wrap their head around. Anyway, please.
So they still haven't found any part of it.
Talk about that for a minute, if you don't mind. It's such an interesting mystery.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think to solve the mystery and really know what the story is, we have to find the wrecks. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And the problem is, as you know, the ocean is vast. I mean, a lot of people just don't comprehend how big the ocean is and how good it is at hiding its secrets. It's extremely problematic to find something. Like you said, it's a needle in a sea of haystacks. I mean, it's not just one haystack. And the fact that the big difference between finding aircraft and, let's say, a steamship or any kind of vessel, one, obviously the size. I think everyone can understand just how different, when you're looking for something that's 200 or 300 foot long versus something that's, 40 foot long.
Right.
That is, it's like night and day. But also the main real thing you have to think about is the speed of travel, the rate of travel. So a steamship, let's say 15 to 17 knots, they'll travel less than 20 miles in the course of an hour, whereas an aircraft, let's say 150 miles an hour. I mean, so it's just the search area for every few minutes gets massive very quickly. And so that's the problem. And we're talking about an area where these 5 aircraft are, it's 70 to 80 miles offshore, off Cape Canaveral, in, almost, it's a couple thousand feet of water. So to really find it, it's could be a very time consuming job. It's gonna be a very expensive job. And obviously there's not really a lot of people just that want to go out and find aircraft. It's not really going to change the end result at the end of the day, right? We know that these aircraft crashed, but I feel there's a duty to these lost airmen to go out and tell that story, especially the PBM Martin Mariner, which I think is more like 20 miles offshore, and that's potentially that's attainable. I've always felt that's the one thing that I can do because I have the means, capability to find it, because it's probably at a depth that I could probably dive to, and it's a distance offshore I can get to. So, but the Flight 19, that is a different animal altogether.
Yeah, well, you brought it up, so let's talk about diving for a second or a minute. I'm passionate about it as well, but I mean, you've got some significant dives under your belt, and I noticed in one of your shows y'all were doing I think a 380, 390 foot dive.
Wow.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about significant planning, and I'll tell you a quick story real fast. So, you're talking about hypoxic diving, and I know my limitations and my limits, and I've been looking at this mark on my bottom machine for years, Mike. And, it's got the perfect plume of life over the top of it. It's got flat ground around it, and then you hit this bump, and it's in 390 feet of water. And I had a tank. I had a couple tanks filled. I think I had 14% or 15%, so hypoxic. And I had them filled, and I looked at them for 2 years. I looked at them for 2 years, deciding, and ultimately decided. I've been bent 7 times, so I've had some history with it, and I've been in the chamber too many times. I had a really bad one. Had an air embolism. Can't even say it. Had an air embolism to the brain. Had stroke symptoms for almost a year. Face was sagging, arms were sagging. And
Wow.
and so, the 390-foot dive to me, it's almost like fly your Cessna 172 to the moon. And there was a time in history where my ego said, yeah, no problem, no problem. All it is math and redundancy, right? I mean, my ego used to tell me math and redundancy, because I guess that's sort of the way I was trained. Math and redundancy, it either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And then history, showed me differently. And I don't know how to describe that to the public. That's something that I think really only guys that have spent a lot of time underwater can understand. But history has shown me that it's not just math and redundancy, that stuff happens. Stuff, unexplainable stuff sometimes happens. And so I looked at those two tanks, with 14.5% in them for years. And eventually I bled them. And, I opened the valves and bled them all off and said, no, my days of 300-foot diving never started and ended, but you're doing it. And
wow.
So first question for you is it just math and redundancy, or I mean, how do you get over the pucker factor on a 400-foot dive?
Great way to ask it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I've always, and I don't want to sound like I'm being just dismissive of, but I've always said that you can drown in 2 inches of water, right?
Yeah,
So I approach all these the same way, take everything seriously. And when you're considering a dive of this depth, you have to also ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
What can we accomplish? You're just going down there and that's, a lot of people are into this for just ego and just to, there are people out there getting depth records just for the sake of getting a number. And for me, this is just a means to the end. I mean, it's all deep diving. It's just it's a mixed gas diving, rebreather diving. It's a tool to accomplish the task. And for me, it's exploration. And if all these wrecks were in 100 foot of water, I'd be fine with that. But the fact is, a lot of these virgin wrecks and the unexplored territory is in the deeper depths that people haven't hit before. So that 200 to 400 foot range is ripe for discovery. And that's why I've kind of focused on that. And you take everything very seriously. There's a lot of planning because, like you said, like a dive like this it'd be deceptively easy if everything goes correctly.
Right.
You have the optimal day and everything goes fine. But that's, as you know, is not always the case. You have to plan for the contingencies, the what ifs. And you do this long enough, like you said, you see a lot of crazy stuff, whether it be weather blowing up on you, currents, I mean, just everything. So you have to take all that into consideration. And that's where you build on your experience of knowing when to say when and when not to do it. So there's just it's a lot of discussions and a lot of planning, but in the end, when it comes to execution, you do it as you've done all your other dives. You take everything seriously. Don't take anything for chance, or just try to be prudent about everything.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing and I've done plenty of 200 plus foot dives, but I've never done a 300 foot plus dive. Would just never really had the need for it, other than the what is that mark I see sort of mystery. And I'm a shipwreck hunter too, so love to just want to know what's down there, But my deep diving has always been focused around finding a big black grouper or the biggest gag you can find. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's just not worth your life, to bring home the biggest fish of the year. It's just not worth your life. And so anyway, even doing the shallower of the deep dives, and what I'd say a shallower of the deep dives would be a 200 foot dive, right? Even those, sometimes you'll rack up in the 20 to 40 minutes of deco if you're not careful. And we're, in our 200 foot, we're out in 3 knots of water usually. And so once you get 20 to 40 minutes of deco racked up in 3 knots of current, I mean, you can be doing miles of drifting.
Yeah.
And that's one of that's just one of the things. I mean, most people, if you haven't ever done it, most people don't take that into consideration, right? I mean, we're not anchoring. I would assume y'all are not anchoring. I mean, nobody that's
Right.
doing deep diving is anchoring. I mean, you're drift diving, you're drift deco diving, and so you could literally end up 4, 5, 6, 10 miles away from where you dropped in the water, and you got to have an experienced boat captain, and you got to have enough stuff on top for the boat captain to follow you and to know what he's doing. And that's just not something that you learn, at least not that I've ever learned. That's not something that you learn in your technical diving course. That's not something that you learn in a PADI course that you could literally be 8 or 10 miles from where you went in. And how do you deal with that on the top? And so there's a lot of stuff other than math and redundancy that goes into planning one of these dives, right?
Exactly. It's a little bit of magic dust. I mean, because at this level, this is a very much a team sport. Like you said, you have to have the dive team know what they're doing. You have to be in sync with a captain who needs to know where to drop you and where to expect you. Where are you in the water column at any given time, so they know where to track you. And unlike you guys, you guys are on an open circuit, we're on closed circuit rebreathers, so we're not really producing a sign of bubbles that you can track, but
right.
So we have to address that other ways. And it's not uncommon, like you said, you might have 1 or 2 knots of current on the bottom, but we're diving anywhere near the Gulf Stream. You can have 3 to 4 knots of current, and over the course of a couple hours, we've surfaced many times 7 to 8 miles away from where we went in.
Yeah.
And so when you're 40 miles offshore, that you need to feel secure that when you reach the surface, there's a boat waiting for you.
Yeah.
Because we've had a situation off Cape Hatteras. We're diving a wreck in about 400 feet of water. It was a U.S. battleship that was sunk after World War I during a test, and in the middle of our decompression, the boat basically broke down. They lost their throttle cables. They couldn't put the boat in or out of gear. We're in a 3-knot current. Then the weather blew up. So this that confluence of events, right?
Yeah.
It's never one thing. It's when multiple things come together and snowball.
Yeah.
That's when things can get really sporty. And so when we surfaced, there was no boat there for basically an hour, almost an hour and a half. We're floating 20 miles off Cape Hatteras in 10 to 13 foot building seas, rolling whitecaps. It was interesting. And we actually had a research vessel come out. They were out there on the monitor with friends of ours, and they got the radio call to come out and help look for us, and eventually tracked us down, and we got on board a different vessel than we left from. And so it was a very interesting day. So it's those kind of experiences. Again, you plan for the worst, and sometimes even your plans can be thwarted by Murphy's Law. So
yeah, I've been left too, and I tell everybody that everybody always asks the same everybody always asks the same question, if they're not a diver, and what is that question? Aren't you afraid of sharks? I mean, I hear that question all the time, and the answer I always give is not really, but I'm afraid of being left. Like if you've never drifted for any period of time in the middle of the ocean by yourself, it's difficult to understand, but that is one of the scariest things you will ever do, is watch the sun go down by yourself floating on the ocean. English, do you hear that beeping? Do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
Anyway, I think we've got a computer beeping. Michael, can you hear that? Mike, do you hear that beeping?
There.
I do. It sounds like someone's either texting you or mailing you.
No, it's something over here. It's a computer.
Maybe hit the volume down on the top and see if that makes a difference.
Got it.
But yeah, that is one of the scariest things that I have ever experienced. And so, it's not sharks for me. It's not even gear failure for me. It's being left and floating. And I don't know if that's the same for you, but it's got to be the scariest thing I think in diving, is being left.
Oh, certainly. I mean, that's one way you'll immediately feel very, very small and very, very alone.
Yeah.
Very quickly, and every minute feels like an hour. It's just an interesting feeling.
So one of those things that you never get trained on, you never expect, that you never really even think about that much, is is a high pressure hose blowing out. I mean, for instance, this has happened to me in the past, and I know we're talking about things that will keep Inglis from ever going in the water diving again, but I've been trying to convince him to go at some point in time. But on an ascent from a deep dive, I had a high pressure hose blow out, and it just blew out on the coupling, where it couples, and blew out on the coupling and started pouring gas into the water. And I'm not sure if I would not have thought through that in the past. I'm not sure I knew how I would have responded. But I basically tied the hose into a knot and kinked it like a garden hose.
Yep.
And was able to get to my deco stop and switch over to my deco tank, thankfully, to my deco gas, which is a little 19 cubic foot for that dive, a little 19 cubic foot tank. But I mean, if you'd have had any less time in the water or not thought through that, it's one of those things that you're not trained on. It's just stuff happens when you're in the ocean. And
yes. And that's you're exactly right. And that's the one thing I've always kind of try to stress to people is you cannot panic underwater, right? It's a situation, a problem arises, you evaluate it and you address it properly, because what you can't let happen is things snowballing out of control. You make the wrong response, the wrong reaction. Exactly. And to a similar story, back when we were doing some deep dives on open circuit, so we're using conventional scuba. We had aluminum 40s. Those are different deco gases. We had 100% oxygen and 50% nitrox. The 50% nitrox we'd start at 70 foot.
Yeah.
And we did this dive. I'm coming up, and as I'm getting ready to switch regulators to go to my deco gas, I went to turn the bottle on, and there's no knob, no handle or anything. It's just the little brass stem sticking out.
Yeah.
So somehow I knocked the valve wheel off. So we were trying to, we're sitting there trying to evaluate. I was with good dive buddies and stuff. So we're kind of looking at it, just kind of like big eyes, like, oh great, what are we gonna do now?
Right.
And, we tried to use shears to try to grip it and turn it on. We tried different tools, and that didn't work. So ultimately, I buddy breathed with a friend who was on his gas until we got to shallow enough to go on to my oxygen. So it was just a funny situation in hindsight. And it was a funny situation at the time because we never let it spiral out of control.
Right.
So,
right.
That's what experience can really bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we have scared Inglis enough today. We probably won't get out. So I'd like to get back to some of your History Channel exploits. And you mentioned Flight 19, you ultimately ended up finding, not related to that if I remember correctly, but you found the Corsair, which was it an Air Force plane?
No, that was a Navy. We found
Navy plane.
The process of this. I've done like 7 or 8 different shows related to the Bermuda Triangle. It's a very popular kind of theme for TV.
Yeah.
But I think we found probably, I want to say 10 or 11 different types of aircraft. I found Hellcats, Wildcats, Corsairs, A3 Sky Warriors. We found a F4 Phantom, S3 Viking. I mean, you run through the catalog of Navy aircraft, and I probably found an example of just about each and every one of them, because as you know, there's a lot of training that goes on offshore our coast.
Yeah.
It would be off South Carolina, off Florida, and there's a lot of aircraft that are lost during these training missions. So. And we also found an Avenger too. A couple years ago, during a show for History Channel, we found an Avenger that
unrelated
got a lot of people's attention. Yeah, because they thought it might be related to Flight 19. It wasn't, but this again demonstrates there's a lot of aircraft offshore that were lost during training. So.
Yeah, we found one too. There's one off of like north of Charleston. There's so the Corsair that I watched, I was watching the show that you had done. The Corsair that I watched, the hatch was open. I think it was a Corsair. Mm-hmm. The hatch was open, and y'all started looking for survivors. And once you thought you had identified the plane, you actually found I think he was 90 years old, a 90-year-old survivor that had kicked out that door and actually survived, right?
Yeah, the Corsair, I don't think we identified that one, but that same program was when we found a Wildcat. And the guy actually survived. He ditched. He had engine failure. He ditched and basically was on the wing when the rescue boats came out to him, and he just basically walked onto the rescue boat as the Wildcat was getting ready to sink.
And you got to talk to his son.
Interesting story.
Got to talk to his son.
No, actually, by the time we found it and traced it all out, the guy had he was at that time he was like 90, 92, 93, and he passed away, unfortunately, 6 months before we dived. So it was just unfortunate,
Yeah.
That we didn't get to talk to him personally. We talked to someone's family and got the information about it, and got to make that connection, saying, "Hey, we found your father's plane." But and that's been the case many times. I've got to talk to a lot of family members because sometimes they're survivors, other times they're the air crew are not so lucky, and we talked to the families that really never had closure because a lot of times they never found the aircraft. And that's been probably, like you talk about discovery and identifying shipwrecks. I mean, for me, the fulfilling part is making that connection with families and bringing them closure. That's been a huge motivator for me in recent years, doing what I've been working on.
And certainly in the, let's just call it the treasure realm. I know we're switching from military to treasure. Yeah. Certainly in the treasure realm, the most interesting parties in the treasure realm happen to be insurance companies nowadays. It seems like, right? I mean, have you had to deal with any of that in recent years?
I have worked with a few different salvage companies. But thankfully, I'm basically more just a hired hand. And don't get into that. But I know the ins and outs of maritime law and salvage claims, and it's no one's interested unless there's money to be made, right? And then everyone comes out of the woodwork.
all of a sudden, Lloyd's of London pops up and says, "Hey, we've still got a claim on that from 1822."
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing. We've dealt with that on a couple of our finds over the years, and one of the things that I've noticed is pretty prevalent here. I would assume it's prevalent there as well. One of the problems with maritime travel prior to the invent of electricity was oil lanterns. Big problem. A lot of the shipwrecks that we find happen to be burned down to the waterline, and then they'll float forever, and then eventually they sink. But a lot of the shipwrecks prior to, let's say, 1900 were just burned. They were burned down to the waterline, and that was their demise. Got in rough seas, and oil lantern fell and caught a fire and burned the whole ship to the ground, to the waterline. And so we found a number of them that are just charcoaled, and then you can see where the waterline was charcoaled once you uncover them from the sand. And a lot of our ships met their demise that way. Do y'all find a lot of those kind of wrecks off of Florida as well?
Oh, definitely. We found quite a few wrecks that were obviously lost by fire. There's one off of Jacksonville we've been diving that had a lot of ceramics and other material on it. And all the ceramics are just you can see they're just exploded, just fragments everywhere.
Yeah.
A lot of brass bits are just melted like puddles of brass. So you see a lot of brass pictures melted because, like you said, I mean, fire was a very big hazard back in the day, and whether it be from oil lamps. I mean, you can read, I'm sure you've done a lot of historical research, like lightning strikes too.
Yeah.
Those would start fires, or boiler explosions. I mean, they run the gamut, and that's a dangerous thing to be facing. You're in the middle of the ocean and trying to fight a fire, wind's blowing it up, and depending on your cargo, you could have really, whether it be cotton or any other type of product that could just be a ticking time bomb. That's for the fuel for the fire. That's gotta be a scary situation.
Gotta be. I mean, pitch black. In the middle of nowhere in the ocean. You've got no radio, right? I mean, it's scary. It's scary enough for us to think about sinking 50, 100 miles offshore with all the stuff that we've got, with life rafts and radios and GPSs and EPIRBs and all the stuff that we've got, survival equipment and suits and water bottles. And God, can you imagine 150, 200 years ago? I mean, you got nothing. You got nothing. I mean, you got no radio, no life suits. If you had a dinghy or a boat, you were lucky. Most of them didn't. And you're going into a black ocean with maybe an oil lamp. It's just an incredible thought. So,
Stephen, you're definitely speaking we're sharing the vibes here because when we do what we do. I mean, when you can really put yourself in the shoes of people, 100, 150 years ago, what they went through and what they were dealing with. It's not an abstract thing. It's not just a shipwreck. There's so much more to it, and it really brings history alive.
Yeah, I wish there was a little booklet that came with every shipwreck that would tell you, this is the story, because some of them do. I mean, you can go back, as you can go back and look through some of the historical documents and newspaper clippings, and you can get there were two survivors, and this survivor gave a historical account of what happened. And usually the purser is one of those survivors. They're going to make sure that he's got the money and he gets on the boat. But it is an interesting idea to think about getting in a black ocean 150 or 200 years ago. And there are lots of those. There are lots of those stories of guys or gals that ended up in a lifeboat and ended up on a barrier island somewhere between here and you, and like I said, most of the time, at least on all the shipwrecks that I've worked, it just so happens to be that the purser was one of those guys. And I can't seem to figure out whether or not, these stories were ever played. And by the way, for those listening, the purser is the guy that's in charge of the money.
That's right. That's what I was wondering. Yeah. He's the man. Right.
He's got the safe in his room. He's in charge of the money. He's sort of like the bookkeeper, I guess, is the best way to put that. And he's always gets on the lifeboat, and he always has a big bag of money with him. And every time I see one of these historical accounts of the purser making it, surviving and making it on board with the money, I always curse under my breath. Dadgummit. We found a French ship from the 1820s off of South Carolina. It's in 135 feet of water. And this was early on in my shipwreck hunting days, and South Carolina's got interesting topography, I guess is the best way to put that. There are some places that have got like 6 inches of sand until you hit this white bedrock, and there are some places that have 30 feet of sand. And we worked both of those sides. We worked on a shipwreck that was in 78 feet of water, and when we were finished blowing the shipwreck, we were in 98 feet of water. No joke. I mean, it would look like a big, like you were sitting when you were working on the wreck, like down in the actual bows of the wreck. It looked like you were sitting in the Super Bowl with, this giant bowl of sand all the way around you. But this French wreck I was talking to you about is back from, it was an 1820s French wreck. The way we figured that out, we found the barometer right off the bat, and it had these markings on the back, and we traced that back. And anyway, eventually found what the wreck was. But it's sitting on a piece of bottom that only had about 6 inches of sand, and we were able to blow it. We were able to blow the sand off from 135 feet. It was just incredible with no current that day. So, the hydrodynamics worked out where we blew the sand right off of everything and cleared it out. There's a big black box sitting in the middle of the ship profile, like maybe 4 feet long, 3 feet tall. I swam right by. I thought it was a haystack boiler. I swam right by it like a dozen times. Didn't pay it any attention. I swear I thought it was a haystack boiler. And eventually, one of the other guys says, "Let's bring it up." And I'm like, "Why are we wasting our time?" We winched the thing to the top, put it on the back deck, and I said, "Holy crap, that's a safe!" And everybody said, "That's a safe. That's a safe."
Wow.
I mean, it was like light bulb went off in my head, and I'd swam past it at least a dozen times thinking it was just a haystack boiler, one of the little haystack boilers. Should have known better because there's a giant mast laying across the thing, so should have known better, just didn't put it together. Anyway, we cracked it open on the back of the boat, cracked it open. I'm thinking gold bars, never going to work again. Perfume bottles.
Oh,
wow.
Wow.
Super cool. I mean, pretty.
That had, yeah.
Super cool, but full of perfume bottles. I was so ticked off. I mean, I wasn't ticked off, but I was ticked off. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Your mind must have been racing at the time. Like, what's in here? And then, that was I wouldn't have guessed that either, because why is that so valuable? You need to lock it into a safe.
I assume,
So,
and I can only assume, the purser got the money out and left the perfume. Is the only thing I can think, and I don't know. What's so valuable about perfume? You got to put it in the safe. I don't know, but lots of little, not big ones, little perfume bottles, like maybe 3 to 4 inches high, all different colors: red, rose-colored glass, green, blue colored glass, real pretty perfume bottles, but no money, no money at all, just perfume bottles. But that's the game, right? I mean, you spend money and time and dreams, just dreams and dreams and dreams. You spend money and time and dreams of what's there, and then you open up a safe and it's perfume bottles.
yeah, definitely. But it also begs the question, like, at what point do you feel risking your life to recover? And a lot of times, the purser, that's not his money, right? It's just it's the shipping line, whoever put it in there. So are you going to risk your life going, below decks to when a vessel's sinking to recover that? And that because to give you an example, there's a wreck I dived a few years ago off of Dover, England. It's called the Pomeranian. It was a beautiful liner, German liner.
Yeah, I think I heard of it.
And it was involved in a collision. And so they were told everyone to get on deck to be prepared to take the lifeboats and evacuate because they're sinking. But the problem was it wasn't really sinking fast enough. And so everyone's on the deck for quite amount of time, and then people start reconsidering, like, oh, I need to go down below deck and get my personal belongings.
Right.
And this was a first class only liner. This is like, a fine liner, a lot of rich passengers. So everyone went below decks to get their personal, belongings and gold, and their, because a lot of people were immigrating, so they were carrying all their possessions and stuff. There's a lot of scenarios like that. And when everyone was below deck, all of a sudden the vessel started taking a serious list and started going down very, very quickly. And a lot of people were ultimately caught below decks, sank by the stern very quickly, and everyone was trying to get out and they couldn't. And we were diving, and I was talking to the local divers there, and they're finding all these double eagle coins, gold coins. And this one guy's found 8 or 10 of them. They're all in the same place. They're on the stairway, the grand staircase, because everyone was trying to get up the stairs, and I guess the panic set in. Everyone now realizes they're doomed, and they're trying to drop everything and get out. And that's where everything is. So, I mean, just knowing that everything is there, that's where they're finding the stuff. It tells a story itself. What was going on, and just the terror and
Last minutes of your life spent trying to collect worldly goods. Sad, but true, right? I mean, that makes perfect sense. I could see myself doing something like that if I thought this boat's not going down anytime soon. I'm not going to lose my life's worth.
Exactly.
I mean, you could. That's humanity, right? I mean, that's the way it works, and pretty incredible stuff to be the first. I'm a big fossil diver too. I love diving for these old megalodon teeth.
Oh yeah, like right in front of me.
Yeah, we've got. I've got a table of them in front of us right now, and to me, there's just something magical about putting your hands on something that nobody has touched. Well, really, in the case of megalodon teeth, ever. But in the case of a shipwreck, like, you're the first person to see and touch that bottle, that coin, that staircase since it went down 150 years ago, 200 years ago. I don't think it's just me, but I mean, to me, there's just something magical about that. And somebody's somebody's last minutes on Earth spent right there on that staircase that you're talking about, that you were diving.
Yeah, and again, it's sometimes it's the intrinsic item, whether it be shark teeth or bottles, but also just the thrill of finding something, like, because you, in a small way, you got to admit, you feel kind of like Indiana Jones. You feel like you feel like a kid again. You feel like you're doing cool stuff, and we are. I mean, we're basically uncovering and finding history.
Yeah.
So it's that charge you get, that jazz. It's almost like a drug, because you just you get that high, like, oh wow, and you want to find something else. And then I've gotten times when I get depressed, where after you come off of a high of finding a cool wreck and you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and you have the name of it, and then it's months and months and months of just diving trawlers or tugboats and crap.
Yeah.
And you haven't found the next really cool wreck, and you get depressed a little bit because it's that energy you get from discovery.
Oh, y'all are definitely adrenaline junkies.
Yeah.
Y'all definitely.
You know what else? So you're right. There's also another element that a lot of people don't realize or think about. There are shipwrecks that have existed for a while, that have been known for a while, that everybody thinks they're done, right? Like they've been salvaged, everything's come off of them. The salvage rights are even gone on it. And then somebody new comes along and says, "Why didn't we ever look under this piece of copper sheathing?" And they pull up this piece of copper sheathing, and what do you know? There's 18 of the most valuable coins on Earth sitting underneath this copper sheathing. And that literally happened right here off the Carolina coast. We have this shipwreck we've called the copper pot for, that was sort of the anecdotal name for years. It was actually the North Carolina was the name of that wreck. And I think Marinex, had rights to it, and then Blue Water had rights to it, or it could have been the other way around. Anyway, whoever lost the first set of rights, people were just diving it left and right for years and years and years after that, before that and after that. And then all of a sudden, Marinex or Blue Water, I can't remember which, pops up, which salvage companies pops up and says, we want to try it again. And everybody says, what? Why? Like, it's been done for years. Why? And they did. They popped up a piece of copper sheathing, and there's, I think, 18 super valuable gold coins that, were minted in this one mint that, just don't exist anywhere else. Super valuable, like $100,000 a piece on these 18 coins. And me and you and your mama and everybody else off of the coast of South Carolina has been diving this wreck for years, swimming right over that copper sheathing. So there's always that little bit of like, maybe there's something else there. Maybe there's something there that nobody ever thought about. That keeps dragging you back to. And I love, if you can't tell, I'm living vicariously through you, because I'm doing more politics and nowadays than I do shipwreck salvaging. But I love shipwrecks. There's something so magical about them. And and you, my friend, are doing it. You're doing it. So one last thing before I let you go. We're coming up on an hour. I know I got to let you go. Pick one. What's your favorite? Like, what's your favorite story, your favorite shipwreck, your favorite plane wreck? Pick one that obviously, you can't say Challenger, right? We've already can't say Challenger. Yeah. We've already talked about Challenger. Let's put Challenger to the side, because that one's cheating, because that one is too good. Other than Challenger, what's one that you lay in bed at night and think about? Dang, this one comes back to me every night. I dream about this one. I daydream about this one. Which one is it?
My answer is probably not going to be fulfilling to you, because I always answer when people ask what my favorite wreck is, and I always say the next one.
Yeah. Because
I think every dive I've done, every wreck I've been on, every dive I do, there's something great about it, for the most part. Sometimes there have been bad experiences, but for me it's the chase. And once I've identified a wreck and you can close that, the final chapter of that story, I got to move on to the next one, and it's the chase. And I'm always dreaming about the next one, right? And being able to get out to, it's like you talked about before. A lot of these wrecks are known about for decades. Fishermen know about these sites, and they make their own names for them because they've been fishing. They know something's there. They don't know what it is.
Right.
And so I've kind of tapped into that. People have entrusted me with their information, and found some really cool stuff. And there's tens of thousands, if not millions, of wrecks out there that are still waiting to be found. And each wreck has a story to tell. And that's what really drives me to keep diving. Yeah,
I like that. I will say that I like that answer because I get it, right? I understand it. And I'm not sure how many people do, but I do. It's about the next one more so than it is the last one, and I get it.
Well, oddly enough, the comments that I'm getting on Facebook are, can't wait to hear this one. This is a great idea. Love you guys' topics, blah, blah, blah. But nobody asked a question. But I got some great comments on here, so we definitely should get some more after we get it up.
Hey, I saw the teaser for the Snowy Grouper wreck, which is a fairly known wreck down there, but I never saw what it was. What did it end up being? Y'all dove it, right?
Yeah, we actually thought it might be an late 1800s steamer,
Yeah.
and it turned out to be a KC-97 Stratter freighter, which was a U.S. Air Force refueling aircraft. And we found that. We actually, that day, also what I also found remarkable too is technology, how technology has changed over the years. And when I first started doing this, and like I'm sure when you started doing this, Stephen, we had to go to libraries, and we had to send snail mail to archives to get information, and now we have all this, in our phone and in our palm of our hand. And so before we even got back to the dock, we knew exactly what aircraft it was, what happened, what day, had the accident report. And I actually talked to one of the survivors of that. So we got just phenomenal, that personal connection, and just him describing the sequence of events and what we were talking about earlier, just how terrifying and just unnerving, with just not only the experiences what he went through, but the sounds were terrifying. Just the metal, groaning and creaking, and just the jarring crash. And it was really just brought the whole incident to life. It really colored in the lines.
Yeah, and by the way, when you're diving a wreck called the Snowy Grouper wreck, it's a deep dive.
It's deep.
Right.
It's a deep. What was it, 400-foot dive, something like that?
That was 365.
Yeah. Very cool, super cool.
So any other TV stuff you've got planned coming up?
We're in talks. I have something potentially coming up this summer. I know they are doing season 2 of Into Cursed Waters, Bermuda Triangle, but I won't be a part of that, it seems, for next season. So I'll be pursuing other options.
Well, whatever they are, I hope you'll keep us informed. I'd love to do another one if you find something amazing, and I know you will, because you're after it, and people that are after it are the ones that get it. When you find something amazing, I'd like to have you back on and you to share your story with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, love to, and better yet, maybe we can catch up and over beers or do a dive. I know I was talking to Kent. I got some plans up in your neck of the woods.
Good.
Later this summer, so maybe we can get together and go have some diving adventures of our own.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of these wrecks that Kent and I have found over the years. I think you might be interested in what's on there.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool.
I'm always interested.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your time. Very fun and entertaining and educational.
Informative.
Loved it.
Thank
Appreciate
you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Michael.
Mike Barnette.
Take care. All right.
Yeah, man, that was great. So, dude, I don't even want to get into the 350 foot deep. I mean, we could have talked for an hour on preparation and everything else. I know he went into some, but.
Yeah, I didn't want to get too much into that because I think it'll bore a lot of people, but I wanted to give you just a flavor of what it requires for him to do a 350, 400-foot dive. It is a lot of planning, a lot of prep, and a lot of confidence, quite honestly. I mean, you got to have the confidence in your gear and the confidence in your plan, and then you got to execute it. It is not strap it on some gear and rolling to the bottom. That is a big, big deal.
I mean, I for some reason already thought that at that depth you were already going to be in a diving apparatus, a submarine or something of that degree. But I guess that's even deeper.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty incredible. There are only a few people in the world that can do that kind of diving, and it's inspiring to hear him talk about it. Because there's just such a mystery, Inglis. I mean, there's such a mystery of stuff that's out there beyond the reachable. It's there, but nobody can get to it. And I've always said, people always ask, how come it is you and some of these other guys kill such big fish, and nobody else can do that? And what's the secret to it? Are you really good shots? Or are you what is it? You do a lot of scouting, or what is it? And the answer is always no. I mean, the answer, I'm a decent shot. I've done a lot of diving and found a lot of spots over the years, but that's not it.
Right.
I mean, the answer is you got to go where other people are unwilling to go. All right? I mean, that's the bottom line. It's just like anything else in the world. It's just like elk hunting, right? If you want to elk hunt in a place that's right off of the road, you're probably going to get the same result as the last lazy guy that wasn't
stopped and didn't walk.
Right. You're going to get the same result. You know, every now and then there's a stupid elk that walks by, but more likely than not, the elk are going to be in a place that's really hard to get to, and the big bulls are going to be in a place that's even harder to get to. It's the same thing with big fish, right? If you're fishing in the same spot that everybody else does, you're going to come up with the same result.
Well, I want to I didn't get to do the rebuttal for you last week because you had already left, but I want to do the rebuttal now about a comment that was made last week on the podcast. And I think Jason and Chris both agree with me that maybe, obviously some fishermen have that mentality that they truly believe that spear hunting is not fishing or that it's unfair. And you kept referencing to me, to George, and my comment was this: I just think that it should be considered hunting and not fishing because it is.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
But I mean, cheating or not, I don't know how you classify it as cheating. It's completely different. I just don't understand where it can be classified as cheating because it is not fishing. I mean, cheating to fish in fishing would be me diving in the water, going down, grabbing a fish, putting the hook in his mouth, setting the hook, and then swimming back up and reeling it up. That's cheating.
Yeah.
Getting out of the boat to go swim with a spear, to go down, go through the depths, get down at the bottom, go looking through these caves or rock bottoms and everything else. Find the fish that you choose to shoot, shooting it, putting it on your stringer, dealing with the bull sharks, and then getting to the top and getting back safely. I mean, it's hunting. I don't think it's cheating. I just think that
it is. It's different.
Yeah.
No, you said that. You said that first, and I think you're exactly right. And I'm coming around to it. I think you're exactly right. You can't compare it to fishing. The only similarity is that you're killing fish.
Fish. Yep.
Right. I mean, that's the only similarity. At the end of the day, it's hunting for fish. And you can't compare it. You can't say it's cheating. It's not cheating. If it's cheating, then by all means, take my gear, strap it on, and go do it yourself. Right?
Yep, that's what I said. Exactly.
And there's not many people willing to actually do it. And the people that are willing to do it will tell you that's not cheating.
Well, Lucas and I talked after he listened to it, and you don't have to worry about neither one of us cheating. So, anyway, Hey, speaking of cheating, we don't want you to cheat, but we want you to sign up for the Grand Strand Fishing Rodeo. Go to TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. Get signed up today. Click on the rodeo logo, and you'll find all the information right there. Had a great month in January. Tournament's growing, and February looks to be just as good. I'm sure the nice weather we're having out there, we'll have some people fishing this week and weighing in. So get signed up, and also don't forget, you got the magazine coming out this week. February will be on the racks by Thursday, and the cover story is about the rodeo. And actually, Greg Holzhauser did an incredible job. It's not just about the rodeo. It's about the past of the rodeo. It's about the future, about the present. Incredible interviews with Jason Burton and with Tom Swassel, two individuals that were very involved with the rodeo, albeit Jason as a angler and Tom as a coordinating manager back in the day. So great perspectives from them. Greg did an incredible job. That is the cover story, but other great articles. I want to welcome Captain Bouncer Smith. I want to welcome Captain Cephas McCrae to our team of writers. And the magazine's growing, getting better and better every week. And also don't forget Southern Anglers Radio Show on every Saturday morning on the Gator 107.9 from 8 to 10. And that's it, man. We've just been busy. And I know you've been busy in Columbia, so we're going to get this thing edited and get it up this afternoon, get it on all the platforms out there. Remember, click like, subscribe, and share. And remember, download. We need you to download it. Anyway, thanks to Michael for joining us today, and hope you enjoyed this show. And remember, we'll be back next week talking fins, fur, and feathers right here on Trilogy Outdoors Podcast. Trilogy Outdoors Podcast is a product of Trilogy Outdoors Media. All views and opinions of our hosts and guests are not necessarily those of our sponsors. Trilogy Outdoors is produced and edited by Trilogy Outdoors Media. Be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also, don't forget our other brands, Southern English Radio Show and Walk 'Em All Outdoor Magazine. To find more information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. And remember, if it's anything dealing with fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it right here on Trilogy Outdoors.